All righty. Welcome back. Good morning. We are going to read part 3 of Jason and the Golden Fleece. Remember, we started it last week, and how it starts out is Jason and his sister, Helly. Is that her name? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Fiscus and Helly are the two children of the king, and their mother goes off, Nephali, she goes off um, for long periods of time when it gets really dry and there's no clouds in the sky, and she doesn't come back till it rains. And a woman from the city came and um, made the king fall in love with her. And so then he ends up marrying her, and she's jealous of the children. So she sends the children off, and the children fly off on the ram with the golden fleece. And um, the little girl, Hali, falls off, and she falls into what's now called Bosphorus, but back then was called the. Trying to remember what it was called. Uh, Well, originally it was called like the Strait of Hali. Splashed into the water. The Sea of Hali. I'm sorry, it's called the Sea of Hali. And it's not called Bosphorus. It's now called Dardanelles. That's what it's now called. And then Jason went on, and the ram, or not Jason, Fiscus went on, and the ram was so tired that it fell over dead. And so Fiscus went ahead and cut the skin off of it, the fleece off of it, and hung it up. All righty. So that's kind of where we are. Now we are on part 3, Jason and the Golden Fleece. Part 3. For many weeks and many months, Jason and his crew of bold adventurers sailed on the Argo. Oh, well, we have to introduce Jason to you too. So Jason, Fiscus has already died of natural causes. And then there was, in another country, there was a king and queen who had a boy named Jason. And um, the king's uncle, I believe, yes, Jason's uncle, he came to the country where the king was, and the king was a very weak king, and so he seized the country, and he sent his brother, Jason's father, away to live, and um, and so then the king sent Jason off to live with to be educated by Cryon. Okay. And he was a centaur. So to be educated by the centaurs. All right. That's where we were now, the centaurs. For many weeks and many months, Jason and his crew of bold adventurers sailed on the Argo. And when the wind failed or when they were in dangerous waters, they took to their oars and they guided the ship through each perilous situation. They visited many islands and encountered many strange creatures along the way. They fought with a band of hideous giants, each having 6 hands, and they escaped from the water nymphs who wanted to imprison them in their crystal caves. They slew the vicious harpies, those frightful flying creatures with hooked beaks and iron claws and shrieking cries, and they navigated their way through the treacherous wandering rocks, which would suddenly crash together when a ship tried to pass between them. The reason that they're on this voyage, Jason and his friend, his crew, who's called the Argonauts, is because remember, Jason went back to the country that his father was originally king, and he was going to take it from his uncle, and his uncle tricked him into going and getting the golden fleece, and that's why he's on this trip. I left that part out, so you might be thinking, why are they on a trip? But now you know. And after all these and other adventures as well, the Argonauts finally arrived in Colchis and were brought to the palace of the king. Now, the king, whose name was Aeetus, had 2 children, a little boy of whom he was very fond, and a dark-eyed, dark-haired teenage daughter named Medea, who was a witch and had many magical ways about her. Aeetus was seated on his throne with his little son at his feet and Medea at his right hand when the Argonauts were brought in before him. Jason was asked what his business was in the Colchias, and he answered that he had come to take the golden fleece back to Greece. The king laughed aloud and said, "You have come on a very bold mission, but the fleece of gold can be won only by those of great courage. If you can perform 3 tasks that I set out for you, only then will I know that such courage is yours, and only then will I allow you to carry away the fleece." Now, the tone in which the king made this challenge showed that he was not afraid of losing the golden fleece. But Jason was not to be discouraged, and he asked the king to tell him about the 3 tasks that he must perform. "The first task," the king replied, "is to yoke 2 fierce fire breathing bulls to the plow, and with them to till the 4 acres of land. The next is to sow the field with the dragon's teeth, and to conquer all of the armed warriors that will spring up out of the earth from these teeth. And the third is to kill the fierce dragon who guards the golden fleece in the woods, but who never sleeps by night or by day. When you have succeeded in doing these 3 things, you may take the golden fleece back with you to Greece." Having said this to Jason, the king dismissed all the Argonauts with a wave of a hand. Although Jason would not let the king see it, he was a little discouraged when he heard what the tasks were. He walked away from the palace down towards the shore where the Argo was anchored, and the thought of Juno's promise and wished that she would help him now. When he came to the ship, he found that there was help awaiting him, for Medea, the king's daughter, had fallen deeply in love with him and had come to talk with him and offer him her aid. She promised to tell Jason certain secrets that would help him do the tasks that seemed so impossible, if, in return, he would make her his wife and take her back with him to his home in Greece. It may seem strange that Medea was willing to leave her home and all the people who loved her to go so far away with this stranger. Indeed, the girl herself hardly knew why she did it. But the truth was that Juno had not forgotten her promise to help Jason, and the only way she could do it was by making Medea love him so much that she would be willing to give up everything for his sake. And so it really was Juno who was helping Jason. The king's daughter gave Jason a magic potion that had the power to protect whoever was anointed with it from harm by either sword or fire. And then she told him just what he must do to overcome the fierce bulls and the armed men. After she left him, he paced up and down in the seashore for a long time, thinking about Medea and about the tasks that tomorrow would bring. The next morning, all of the people of Cloclius went in a great crowd to see the field where Jason was to meet his death, as they thought. In the midst of them sat King Aeetus himself, with Medea at his right hand. In all that vast crowd, she was the only one who dared to hope that Jason would be successful. As soon as Jason entered the field, the 2 bulls came snorting in and bellowing towards him. If you could have seen the creatures, you would have believed, as all the people did, that Jason's last hour had finally come. They were great, ugly creatures with hooves of brass and horns pointed with iron. As they came tramping along, making the ground tremble at each step, their brazen hoofs, they breathed out curling flames from their nostrils, so that the fields and the air itself seemed to be on fire. But Jason did not feel the heat of the flames, thanks to Medea's magic potion. He went up close to the angry creatures and, seizing them by the horns, dashed their heads quickly together until the bulls were stunned. Then he swiftly slipped the yokes over their heads. The bulls were now as gentle as cows, and Jason plowed the 4 acres in straight ridges and furrows. Next, he was given a sack of dragon's teeth, and he sowed these teeth on the left and on the right in the soil he had just turned up. In less time than it takes to tell, a mass of helmets began to show through the ground, just as the leaves pierce through the soil in the springtime. But whereas the leaves are followed by pretty blossoms, these helmets covered with an ugly crop of fierce armed soldiers who leaped out of the furrows, all furious for battle, and rushed to slay Jason. Remembering Medea's advice, he picked up a large stone and threw it into their midst, which caused each of the soldiers to think that his neighbor had thrown the stone. They turned their attention away from Jason, and instead they turned upon each other with their spears and their swords. In a few minutes, they were all fighting and struggling in a confused mass, and they fought so fiercely that in a short time, the field was strewn with the dead bodies of the men who had sprung up from the dragon's teeth. Of course, the people all rejoiced at Jason's success. But the king looked angry and sullen. He knew very well that Jason could not have succeeded except by the aid of magic, and he suspected that in some way Medea had helped this stranger. Therefore, when Jason asked for leave to begin his third task, the king answered that he had done enough for one day and that he should rest until tomorrow. But that evening, Medea, who could see that her father suspected her, came to Jason and told him that he must kill the dragon the very night and sail for home. She said that she feared her father would put her to a cruel death and that he had planned for some harm to befall the Argonauts as well. She gave Jason a drug that would put the dragon to sleep, and Jason made his way alone into the dark forest. He had not gone far when he noticed a golden light among the forest trees, and he knew that he must be near the treasure that he was seeking. So he went along carefully, and when he came within sight of the dragon, he doused his spearhead with the magic drug, and he cast his spear with a mighty throw, just as Cryon had taught him. The point embedded itself in one of the dragon's eyes. Ew. And the beast hissed and roared so loudly that all of the people in Clocleus were shaken from their beds. Soon the drug took its effect, and the wounded dragon lay down fast asleep. Now Jason climbed on the neck of the beast, and he hewed off its head with one mighty stroke of his sword. Wow! He seized the golden fleece from the branches of the sacred oak tree where it hung, shining like a golden cloud at dawn, and he then hurried back to his ship. The Argonauts were very glad to see him, and Jason, taking Medea in his arms and carrying her aboard the Argo, called for the anchor to be lifted and the sails unfurled at once. The ship slowly began to pull away, just as the people of Clocleus came running down to the shore, and they launched volleys of arrow out into the bay. But these were deflected by the shields of the Argonauts, and soon the ship was far out to sea, heading towards home, carrying the golden fleece. After a long and hard journey filled with even more adventures, they at last reached their homeland. Jason banished his uncle from the kingdom and set his father back on the throne. Thus he fulfilled his vow, and the Argonauts had shown that they truly were heroes still alive in the land. As for King Aeson, he had grown young again because of all the happiness at his son's return, and he ruled his kingdom in peace for many, many years. Now, something that we know about the Greeks is that they placed great value on wisdom. And those who were wise, like Cryon, although he was only a half race of monsters, was given care and training of the king's royal children. So, Cryon, remember, the king sent his son Jason to live with Cryon, even though he was half monster. Sophos was the Greek word for wise, and we can see it in our modern words philosopher, one who loves wisdom. Remember, that's one of our words. And sophisticated, which means culture and worldly wise. It can also be seen in a combination of the Greek opposite words, moros, which means fool. One who is a wise fool might know only part of what true wisdom requires, and so would know just enough to get himself in trouble. And the word is sophomore. That's the word that they're talking about. All right, let's go ahead and answer some questions about this. What 3 tasks were that Jason needed to complete? These are also going to be in your Bright Thinker, so you're going to have to answer these. He had to yoke the 2 oxen and plow the field with the dragon's teeth. He had to slay all of the warriors that came out of the field. And then he had to kill the dragon that was guarding the golden fleece. Why does Medea offer to help Jason? Yeah, Juno kept her promise to help Jason, and she made Medea fall madly in love with him, and so she wanted to help. How does Jason get the bulls yoked together? He's been anointed with the oil, and the oil, remember, protects him from the fire. And because of that, he's able to get close enough to the bulls. I said oxen, but I meant bulls. And he bangs their head together, knocks them unconscious, and then he puts the yoke on them, and then they're very calm. How did Jason confuse the soldiers, the ones that popped out of the dragon's teeth? How did he confuse them? Yeah, he threw a rock in their midst, and they were so angry and they were so ready to fight that they didn't know who threw the rock, and they thought each other had thrown it, so they just started attacking each other. How did Jason get past the dragon? Again, magic potion from Medea. He dipped this tip of his spear in it, and he flung the spear at the dragon, piercing its eye, and then it had the magic potion on it that made it go to sleep. Then he climbed on its neck and he cut his head off, just like in Adventures of Isabel. Was there a happy ending to the story? What do you think? That's up to you. You tell me what you think. Yes or no, and then tell me why or why not. You guys have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow with a Thanksgiving book because tomorrow is the day before Thanksgiving break. Bye bye.